what is Scientology?
There's the way a Scientologist would describe it, and then there's the way an ex-Scientologist might describe it. On my channel, I like starting most of my videos by calling Scientology a multi-billion-dollar international family-destroying human trafficking cult. You know, that's fun for me to say. That still leaves people going, yeah, okay, but what is it? To be as fair as possible, Scientology is...
Aaron Smith-Levin is a former Scientologist and one of the most outspoken critics of the church today. And this one is all about Scientology.
Scientology at its lower levels is pretty good at making people feel better and feel helped. And that's why people get sucked in, and it's what makes them stay. When I was 12, my mom took me and my brother out of school, and we started working full-time for Scientology. You're signing a staff contract, but your contract says that you're a religious volunteer, so they don't have to pay you at all. You work for them 24/7, 365. Like, your entire existence is working for Scientology.
When did you leave and how did you leave?
If you get pregnant, you have to either get an abortion or leave the Sea Org. They want you to get an abortion. My wife and I, we left when she got pregnant. I said, Heather's pregnant. We are not going to get an abortion. And so we will be leaving. And they said,
oh God. So you left the church. You've been very outspoken against Scientology, helping people that want to leave. But what has Scientology done to you? Aaron, nice to finally connect.
Nice to meet you.
That's I appreciate it. You first came on my radar for real when I did a video, a documentary about Linkin Park's new vocalist, Emily Armstrong, and her ties to Scientology. And you did a brilliant review or a reaction, I don't know what you call this, on YouTube of it, where you kind of polished some of my my lack of research, and some of it is, it's hard for me, right, as a, I don't know what you can call me, as a storyteller on YouTube, to be able to verify all kinds of sources, right? You have some insights and some inside that I don't have. But then I came over your brilliant channel, Growing Up in Scientology, which people should go and check out immediately. It's a brilliant channel. I think most people have heard about Scientology, but what is it really? Why do people talk about Scientology? What's the drama? And that's what I want to dive into with this conversation. So
I hope I wasn't too mean in my reaction video.
No, you were not at all. You were actually very because I've saw it, because I got tagged a bunch. You have a very loyal and engaged audience, and they tagged me and were like, you should watch this and you fix your video and re-upload and edit and fix it. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, this guy's probably going to butcher me. But you didn't. You were very kind, very, very kind. And of course, some parts I guess you have your knowledge and your insight, so you felt like maybe I took some shortcuts, but which I think is fair. I have critique is always nice, and very constructive criticism, I guess.
Okay, good. It is funny how many comments I get from the Linkin Park fans who want to be like, so your only evidence is trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. Like, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? I go, no, it's not my only evidence. But it's the luxury that I have of being in this very small community where I can verify something for myself, even if it's from a source that I cannot share, or even it's with evidence that I cannot share. Because if people who are in the Scientology bubble, if it ever becomes known that they're sharing information with me, they get expelled. They lose their friends, they lose their family, they lose their jobs, they lose everything. But people on the internet just want to be like, so you've got no evidence. And I'm like, okay, all right.
It's a conundrum. And I understand, because it was the same with me, because I heard I think I saw some of the things that you mentioned in your video. I had actually read, but it was very hard for me to verify. Like elsewhere than Reddit. And then of course it's very hard to put it in but it is hard like that. This is because this seems to me that the Scientology movement, they're very good at this very thing. like making sure that people don't leak and stuff don't come out. And if it does, then they try to do whatever they can to kind of undermine the people who try to leak stuff. And but maybe we should go back in time and like some people listening to this now, what is Scientology even? So maybe we can start with that. Like before we even talk about you and your journey in Scientology, like what is Scientology?
Yeah. So there's the way a Scientologist would describe it, and then there's the way an ex-Scientologist might describe it. On my channel, I like starting most of my videos by calling Scientology a multi-billion-dollar international family-destroying human trafficking cult. But even that, whereas that's fun for me to say, that still leaves people going, yeah, okay, but what is it? What is it? So to be as fair as possible, Scientology is the offshoot of what L. Ron Hubbard started with Dianetics. And Dianetics was supposed to be a mental science, kind of like a common man's psychotherapy, to cure anything that's wrong with the mind. And the theory was that everything that's wrong with you physically is from your mind, and Dianetics can fix anything that's wrong in your mind that's causing you not only physical pain, but anxiety, neurosis, stress, not achieving your full potential. Okay, Scientology became more. If I get too long-winded, please stop me. And if you have any follow-ups, please interrupt me. A Scientologist would call Scientology an applied religious philosophy. But then someone still goes, yeah, but what is it? What is it? You can never explain it. Yeah. Okay. Scientology is, man, I've done such a good job explaining this in the past. And there's like 3 different ways I want to explain it at the same time. And I'll try to just take it one at a time. Let's start with what Scientologists believe. And then we can get into, but what is it?
Yeah, okay.
Scientologists believe that we, as spiritual beings, that we are not our bodies, we are immortal, godlike spiritual beings that have been around for, let's say, 60, 70 trillion years. Okay. And when I say godlike, I don't mean like the Christian God. I mean like we existed before there was even a physical universe. We created the physical universe. Not like a Christian might say God created the earth. No, we created the physical universe. Scientologists don't believe in a God because they believe we are all collectively God. Or we are all collectively what someone might have the concept of is God. And that we as individual spiritual beings, natively have that godlike potential. Yeah. And that we have over the trillions of years, and for various reasons L. Ron Hubbard explains, forgotten that that's who we are or what we are, and that we actually have become trapped in these bodies. We've been trapped here trapped in the physical universe, trapped here on Earth, and trapped here in these bodies, and that this is a prison planet. And that we as spiritual beings, part of the prison is that we even forget we're in a prison. We don't even realize we're in a prison. We think we live one life in a body. But really, when our body dies, we are programmed as beings to teleport to the Between Lives implant station on the far side of the moon, where the evil alien psychiatrists wipe our memories. I'm not kidding.
This is where Scientology loses, because up until this, it sounds to me like I have a lot of friends who have done DMT and ayahuasca. They talk about the same stuff, right? We are all the same. We are, maybe not, they don't use the word godlike, but we are all like, we are the same, and we are connected, and we have created everything. We are a part of everything. All those, like, this is spiritualism to me. But when you go to this planet and the alien psychiatrist, that's where L. Ron Hubbard lose me, at least.
Up until that point, it's totally.
No, I fall off the wagon a bit before, but like I've heard people who are not like terrible people agree with L. Ron Hubbard up until that point, if you understand what I'm saying.
Totally. And so, but it is interesting though to truly know and to truly properly answer the question, what is Scientology? You really do have to explain what they believe first. And so you drop your body. That's what they call dying, dropping your body. Yeah. They view bodies are completely meaningless. They're completely irrelevant, right? They're just meat. They're just water meat sacks. So they mean nothing.
Well, sorry, I'm interrupting, but so death does not mean anything in Scientology.
You've
Funerals.
died trillions of times. Who cares? You've died trillions of times on multiple planets and multiple galaxies and universes. It's totally meaningless. Other than the fact that it's painful, and that incident of pain, L. Ron Hubbard says, is recorded in a facsimile in your mind, and that image of pain can affect you negatively later. But that image of pain can be erased using Scientology's auditing procedures. The only relevance of death is that it involves pain and unconsciousness. And you have to erase that pain and unconsciousness in order to have higher spiritual awareness and ability.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason for not dying is not like is only that it's painful. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Continue.
Okay. So when we drop our bodies, we're pre-programmed, because remember, this is a prison planet. So the way they keep us on this prison planet is we're pre-programmed to report to the Between Lives implant station, where they wipe our memories and shoot us back down into a new baby body to live a new lifetime. And this happens over and over and over and over and over again. And it's how we're kept on this prison planet. And that organized religion, the world's mainstream religions like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, these are just part of the programming that have been instilled in us by the evil alien psychiatrist overlords, or prison guards, to help keep society under control, calm, obedient, and also believing that we only live one lifetime. And so this is almost like Scientology's spiritual version of The Matrix, which I know you've seen the movie, right?
Yeah. I think most people have, but this sounds like a mix of a lot of movies. It's like a little bit of 1984, Star Wars. Yeah, it is. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on, and I guess that is. I'm kind of. I guess I'm moving ahead in the script here, but L. Ron Hubbard, from what I understand, he used to be a sci-fi writer, right? That is his gig. That was
science
his gig.
fiction, fantasy, westerns. He was a very prolific author before he came up with Dianetics.
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
and so basically, Scientology, because what it is a series of procedures designed to fix and cure everything I've just described. Scientologists believe that through Scientology's procedures of auditing, which is sort of their version of talk therapy, you can erase all of these recorded moments of pain and unconsciousness, and then take further steps up Scientology's bridge to total freedom to get closer and closer and closer to regaining your native godlike spiritual powers. And one of those powers you're supposed to gain by doing Scientology is the ability to consciously skip the Between Lives implant station the next time you die, the next time you drop your body, so that you can come back in your next lifetime with full and total recall of your previous life, and including retaining all of the gains and the knowledge you got from your Scientology studies and auditing. Like, that's one of the things Scientologists are really hoping for, is the next time I drop my body, I'm going to remember everything.
Has there ever been anyone who has achieved that?
No.
No. Okay. No, I understand. But we're still hoping, right?
We're still hoping. We're still waiting. Yeah. We're waiting for L. Ron to return.
Yeah. I
Isn't
understand.
that the most ironic part of all of this is if L. Ron Hubbard wanted to prove to the world, not just the Scientologists, that Scientology was real, all he had to do was come back. Hell, if he comes back, I'll rejoin,
Yeah.
All he had to do was come back, prove it, convince people it was really him, and that would be all the evidence anyone would need that Scientology was real. But he actually said he wasn't coming back, and he had a really good reason. He was going to go get Scientology started on another planet while we finished the job getting everyone into Scientology on this planet.
So we've learned a bit about what Scientology is, but I want to touch on the auditing process after. But let's talk about your story. How did you get involved in Scientology?
So my mom got involved in Scientology when I was a kid, when I was about 4 years old. So it's 1984. And I lived a relatively normal childhood until I was about 12. So like my mom got in Scientology, and right away she joined staff. And that's one thing we haven't really described, is like the different levels of involvement in Scientology. And,
Yeah.
public Scientologists, as they call them, pay to do Scientology courses. They pay to get Scientology auditing.
Customers.
They're customers. And Scientology staff members work for the organization, but they also live in the real world, and they have to, pay their way in the real world. They have to support themselves, and staff members sign contracts for 2.5 years or 5 years. And when your contract is done, you can leave staff if you want, and you can go back to being a public.
They get paid, right? It's like a job.
They're supposed to get paid, but they don't. They end up not. You do not make money really. Like a staff member might get $50, $100. Like $100 a week would be a lot for a staff member.
Okay.
And if there's no profit left over at the end of the week after paying all the bills, you don't get paid. You're signing a staff contract, but your contract says that you're a religious volunteer, so they don't have to pay you at all.
Again with the religion. They play the religion card there as well. Okay. I see where this is going.
Very lucrative.
Yeah.
Okay, so then above a staff member, you have what they call a Sea Org member, a member of Scientology's Sea organization, or the Sea Org.
Yeah.
And these are the guys that sign the billion-year contracts. They do not live in the real world. They do not support themselves. They wear the Navy uniforms. They used to wear Navy uniforms. Now they've got a more socially acceptable version of a uniform. Not that the Navy isn't socially acceptable, but it's not that socially acceptable for religious people to walk around wearing Navy uniforms. That offends a lot of people. And so these people, like I was both a staff member and then later a Sea Org member.
Okay, but you say there they don't live in the real world. What does that mean?
Well, they live in apartments owned by Scientology, and they only live with other Sea Org members. And so if you're a staff member, you still have to, pay rent or pay a mortgage to someone in the real world. Like you either own a home, which is what I call living in the real world, or you're paying rent to some non-Scientologist. You have to figure out how to feed yourself. That's what I mean by living in the real world. Like you have to come up with enough money to figure out how to feed yourselves. Scientology's not going to feed you. But if you're a Sea Org member, Scientology feeds you, and they provide you a bed, and they provide you with your clothes, your uniform. But you work for them 24/7, 365. Like your entire existence is working for Scientology. You don't have the weekends off. You don't get Christmas off. You don't just put in for vacation. You don't, and also it's a contract for the rest of your life. So there's no, I'm done after 2.5 years or 5 years. Like you're committed to do this for the rest of your life.
But how is that allowed?
You're a religious volunteer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way,
I see. Okay. So
it's not. Yeah. It's not a legally enforceable contract. Like Sea Org members leave the Sea Org even though they've signed a contract agreeing to be in the Sea Org for the rest of their lives. It's just, it's a Scientology contract. The courts would never uphold it.
No. I see. What's above the Sea Org? Who's there? No. One man.
Nothing's. Oh, you mean what's in charge of the Sea Org?
Yeah.
David Miscavige.
Yeah. And one man. There's not like a group of people. There's not like a colleague. Correct. It's one man.
Correct. One man has full control. It is like Kim Jong-un in North Korea. You cannot question him. He has full and absolute command. And actually questioning him is one of the few things that could very quickly just get you completely expelled from Scientology.
Who is David Miscavige, and how did he get so powerful?
So David Miscavige is a man, I think now he's probably somewhere around 65 years old. He himself was brought into Scientology by his father when he was a young teenager. He did know L. Ron Hubbard. He did work with L. Ron Hubbard. He joined the Sea organization at a young age, and just ended up rising to a certain level of authority and responsibility in Scientology, so that once L. Ron Hubbard died, he was one of the few people fighting to take over control of Scientology, and he happened to be the one who won.
How did that happen? So L. Ron Hubbard dies. Was this kind of like when Stalin died, where like people are like, okay, like who's like, had he appointed David Miscavige as his successor, or was it like a vacuum there, a void, and people were fighting?
he actually appointed 2 other people to take over.
Okay.
And so the last 6 years of L. Ron Hubbard's life, he was off in hiding in complete isolation. He was hiding from the authorities. He was hiding from lawsuits. And he brought 2 trusted aides with him, Pat Broeker and Annie Broeker. And they were called his messengers. And before L. Ron Hubbard went off into seclusion, there was a whole group of people that formed an organization that he called the Commodore's Messengers Organization. Now, remember, we were talking about the Sea Org organization, right?
Yeah.
Well, L. Ron Hubbard called himself the Commodore of the Sea Org organization. So his title was Commodore.
Yeah. I
Now,
see.
L. Ron Hubbard was in the Navy for real when he was younger. So this is sort of where he took all this from.
Of course, everything is stolen.
So when L. Ron Hubbard first started the Sea Organization, he started it on an actual ship. And the ship was big enough that he would use the kids of Scientologists to run messages for him. And these kids were called his messengers. Well, later, these kids basically became his most trusted senior level Scientology managers. And so an organization was formed called the Commodore's Messengers Organization. And these were the actual senior most managers in all of Scientology. So Pat and Annie were 2 trusted members of the CMO, the Commodore's Messengers Organization. So they went off with L. Ron Hubbard, and they were some of the only 2 people for the last 6 years of L. Ron Hubbard's life who ever interacted with him or knew where he was. David Miscavige was not one of the people who knew where L. Ron Hubbard was or had any direct communication with L. Ron Hubbard.
So David Miscavige was not in the Commodore's
CMO.
Messengers Association or whatever. Yeah.
He was in the CMO. He just wasn't 2 of the people. Like even the CMO did not know where L. Ron Hubbard was. Only Pat and Annie knew where L. Ron Hubbard was.
Okay.
And only Pat and Annie, they knew where he was because they were there physically with him.
Yeah.
They were his caretakers. They were his everything. So what would happen is David Miscavige was assigned to a project to get rid of all of the legal threats against L. Ron Hubbard so that L. Ron Hubbard could come out of hiding. This is where where David Miscavige got and accumulated the power that he accumulated on the business side of things, while Pat and Annie were off with L. Ron Hubbard on the seclusion side of things.
Yeah.
So because L. Ron Hubbard was in hiding, he wasn't really, I mean, he was in control, but in order to be in control, you have to be physically present. Like people have to know that you're going to show up in their face and, give them a hard time, or else are you really in control? So David Miscavige ended up being the one because he was the one dealing with the lawyers, the accountants, the private investigators. He was the one sort of on the business side of things being like, I'm here executing L. Ron Hubbard's orders. And so David Miscavige was the one who was there. Pat and Annie were with L. Ron Hubbard, but no one ever saw them. No one even knew who these people were. These weren't famous people. Okay, I'll try to keep my thoughts coherent and chronological here. Okay, so the way communications would get from L. Ron Hubbard to the rest of Scientology is Pat Broeker and David Miscavige would meet up at some secret location, and Pat Broeker would deliver to David Miscavige all of the telexes and dispatches and notes and reports and orders from L. Ron Hubbard. And then that would go to David Miscavige, and then David Miscavige would do what needed to be done with all of that. Now, this also put David Miscavige and Pat Broeker into an interesting position of being able to completely manipulate L. Ron Hubbard, who was also gradually losing his mind as he became older and even more delusional.
Especially then, yeah.
Right. So if David Miscavige wanted to take someone out, all he had to do was feed L. Ron Hubbard information that this person had been caught doing something, treasonous, and L. Ron Hubbard would issue an order to punish the person, remove them from post, expel them. So David Miscavige could manipulate L. Ron Hubbard to get him to do and remove anybody David Miscavige wanted to remove.
Yeah. And what is, because this could almost sound conspiratorial. So what is David Miscavige's end game? Do you believe that he believes in Scientology, or do you believe that he's only there for the power or for the access or whatever?
I don't think it's completely clear cut, and I don't think it's been the same answer all along. Here's what I mean. Scientologists believe a particular version of the lore surrounding L. Ron Hubbard. David Miscavige knows that lore is not true. So he doesn't believe the same things or in the same way that your rank and file Scientologist believes. But I still believe that I believe that he believes in the nuts and bolts and the primary core elements of Scientology. I also believe, though, that he believes L. Ron Hubbard screwed it up and didn't finish the job. And now it falls on David Miscavige's shoulders to clean up the mess that L. Ron Hubbard left behind. And to give you a little bit of an example of what I mean by that. So I don't know if you're familiar with what Scientology calls its bridge to total freedom. It's like, have you seen this thing?
No, you have to. This is new to me.
Okay. If you look at it, and you can find an image of it on the internet, it's a big chart. It's a big poster, right?
Oh yeah, that one. Yes. That one I know. Yes, the one we have to progress in the auditing process in order to get to the ultimate level, the OT level or whatever. You can probably explain this much better than I can.
That's right.
Yes, I've seen that one. Yes.
The upper confidential levels are called the OT levels, or the operating Thetan levels. The chart goes up to OT 15. But nothing has ever been released beyond OT 8. And a lot of Scientologists have finished OT 8, and they know, and everyone else knows, it don't make you into anything special whatsoever. In fact, a lot of the OT 8 seem crazier than your average person or your average Scientologist.
Yeah.
L. Ron Hubbard basically led everyone to believe that all of these other magical, unreleased upper OT levels is what's really going to cause you or allow you to become what native state. Native state is an actual word they use in Scientology. That's getting back to your native, godlike, infinite power potential, where like literally you could have go out of your body and go out of your body and back into your body at will. Like I could, my body could be here, but I could be over with you, like, you know, like teleportation and stuff, but spiritual teleportation, not teleporting your body. You're supposed to have telekinesis. You're supposed to be able to read minds. You're supposed to, like, you're a god. I mean, you're Neo. You're Neo in the Matrix. You're Neo in the Matrix at the end when he figured out he could control everything. He just had to realize that he could.
Yeah.
Okay.
And no, as you said, a lot of people have reached the OT8, and that is kind of the last step of where you're still immortal and you cannot teleport your I don't know, whatever, spirit or something. But and David Miscavige, he knows that it's just BS. There are no upper levels. Or
that's right. He knows there's no upper levels, but he didn't know until
I could have
after
told
L. Ron
them.
Hubbard
I could have
died.
told them that there's no upper levels, I guess, like everybody. But okay, continue.
So this is what happens. So L. Ron Hubbard dies. Pat Broker claims to be in possession of all the upper OT level materials. This is how Pat Broker retains control for a little while after L. Ron Hubbard dies. Okay. David Miscavige gets sick of being led around by Pat Broker, and he orchestrates a raid on the warehouse, on the property where Pat Broker has all of L. Ron Hubbard's materials. And when I say a raid, I'm talking trucks, shotguns, Sea Org members, like a raid, right? Okay, so Pat Broker was out of town, and David Miscavige and his henchmen show up with weapons and trucks and says, we have a man inside the FBI. This property is about to be raided by the government. We cannot let them get their hands on L. Ron Hubbard's research notes. We need everything in here loaded up into all of these trucks right now. And so that's how he stole all the stuff that Pat Broker had. This is like, you said it sounds conspiratorial. This is conspiratorial.
This is a real conspiracy. Yeah, I see. Yeah. And then he went through all the stuff, and there he finds that there's nothing.
Nothing.
How do you know there's nothing?
Because the Sea Org members who were there on this operation with David Miscavige have since left Scientology, and many of them have told these stories, and they all tell the exact same story.
Yeah, I
And
see.
even if there was something, there would have to be some vault where these materials were kept. And in Scientology, you have certain little organizations and sub-organizations whose job, whose responsibility is to go through everything L. Ron Hubbard left behind and process the material accordingly, because there was some unreleased material. Release a new course, release a new policy letter, release a new this. And it was well known in Scientology what this office was. It was called the L. Ron Hubbard L. Ron Hubbard Technical Research and Compilations Unit. It was It was housed in. It was the department inside a greater organization called the Office of the Senior Case Supervisor International. And so there's certain senior executives in the C organization that Scientologists know are the ones who would know what is all this unreleased material. Those people have also left Scientology. And
But
they've
there could be though that this Pat Broker guy, that he hid it somewhere else. Like it could be.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if that were true, Pat Broker would have never had to give up control of Scientology. And eventually, once Miscavige called Pat Broker's bluff, he just basically went off into the sunset. Pat Broker's still alive. He's never spoken out. But you know who did speak out? The private investigators that David Miscavige hired to follow him for 30 years.
Oh God. After he left, yeah, this is insane. Okay, we have to talk more about how the Scientology movement operates. But back to your story. So you literally grew up in Scientology then.
Yeah.
How did you like? The way you describe it, your mom, she was a staff member, so you lived in a regular, like you were part of a regular community as well. So how did you kind of cope with that?
It was a little awkward as a child, knowing that my mom worked full-time for Scientology, but not really truly knowing how to describe it, knowing how to explain it, and not really wanting to. I lived a relatively normal life until I was 12 or 13 years old. I went to public school. I played baseball. I played football. I played roller hockey. Relatively normal life. When I was 12, my mom took me and my brother and my stepbrother, stepsister out of school. And we started working full-time for Scientology. So we did like 1 year of homeschool, but when that was over, that was it. And this was in Philadelphia, by the way. My mom got into Scientology in Philadelphia. There's a Scientology organization in downtown Philly.
Yeah.
And we did some sort of preliminary staff training there in Philly for maybe 6 months. And then we were sent to Clearwater, Florida. And so for me, I was then in Clearwater, Florida, training full-time, not doing any regular world schooling, but doing full-time Scientology.
In Clearwater, that's where the Sea Org has its headquarters, right?
No, but it is where the largest Scientology organization in the world is.
Okay.
The headquarters is in Los Angeles. The corporate headquarters is in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Scientology will describe the Clearwater organization as its spiritual headquarters, which is just gobbledygook. It doesn't mean anything.
There's a lot of gobbledygook in this whole with everything here, but continue. Okay.
Yeah, on a per capita basis, there's probably more Scientologists, Scientologist versus non-Scientologist. Probably a higher density of Scientologists in Clearwater, Florida than anywhere else in the world. But even then, there's only a few thousand Scientologists in Clearwater, Florida. But it is the largest Scientology organization. And it's also the only Scientology organization in the world where you can do OT7. And, Scientology has a ship. You might have heard of it, right? The Freewinds ship. Yeah. Have you seen this?
Yeah, I've seen some. Yeah, it's a strange thing.
So Clearwater, Florida is the only place you can do OT7. And the ship is the only place that you can do OT8. So you see, the reason I called it gobbledygook is because technically Clearwater's not even the spiritual headquarters. The ship is the spiritual headquarters because that's where you can do the highest level.
Yeah. This is okay. We're flip-flopping here, but this is how these should go. Yeah. So you can only be at the ship for OT8, but isn't because we haven't described the auditing process, but isn't just how you progress in the steps, isn't that just auditing?
Yeah.
So you have to be audited on the ship then, in order. And if you succeed, you can get. Let's now talk about the auditing process. This is where you hold these two barrels of something in your hands, and you're supposed to get a meter to float. And if you get the meter to float, wow, chickaboo, success. Now you have progressed, right? That is the and of course, and I think that this is the thing that is maybe. I think we should I think that the auditing process could actually be helpful for people, right?
I mean, the answer is Scientology at its lower levels is pretty good at making people feel better and feel helped. And that's why people get sucked in, and it's what makes them stay. Like, if Scientology was just garbage right from the beginning, nobody would ever stay.
Yeah.
It is a little complicated as an ex-Scientologist to say Scientology or auditing can be helpful, because it's also hard to isolate one part of Scientology when Scientology in totality is very much a net negative. But I do acknowledge that the introductory auditing levels, the lower level auditing levels, and the lower level courses are designed to be very, very helpful for, real world, everyday problems. And I think most ex-Scientologists would acknowledge that that is how they felt doing those lower levels.
But how would it work? So let's say that I went into your office and I was a newbie, a rookie, and I've kind of been sold on the idea of Scientology. How would an auditing session work? Like, how would it start?
They all start the same way, but almost like every time you start a car, you go through the same motions to start a car, but you're going to drive a different place every time, right? All auditing sessions begin the same way. I don't think that's really what you're asking. I think you're like, what are you doing in an auditing session? How does it actually look? How does it actually sound? And you see, every different level of Scientology tackles sort of a different subject, especially at the lower levels. So like the very first, or one of the lowest levels of Scientology, the auditing sessions are all designed around sort of just doing memory exercises so that you get comfortable recalling incidents from your past, because that's what all auditing really entails, is recalling incidents from your past and then your past lives, right?
Yeah, which a lot of psychotherapy also functions that way, right? So there, again, it could be some of the positive effects of auditing. Yeah.
Well, totally. And also, anything you do where you're sitting down and you're talking about yourself with someone else, as long as they're not telling you you're a piece of crap, at the end of that conversation, you're probably going to feel a little bit better about something,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's
okay,
true.
So one of the lowest levels of auditing has to do with basically doing memory exercises. And then the next level has to do with doing communication exercises. Communication is something everyone struggles with, things they don't want to talk about, things they're ashamed to talk about, people they wouldn't want to talk to, would be afraid to talk to, would be intimidated by. So you're doing auditing. The subject is on communication. And then the next auditing level has to do with transgressions, sins, things you're ashamed of, things you're withholding, things you're afraid will be found out about you, things that are burdening you down with guilt. That's going to be the next level. And then
that's when you, as a Scientologist, hits record.
Oh, Scientology is recording all of this.
Okay. Yeah.
But yes. Yeah. And then the next auditing level will have to do with the concept of change. Change is something a lot of people struggle with. So there's a lot of repetitive communication processes about change. And then the next auditing level has to do with fixed conditions, people staying in particular conditions because they're afraid that if they were to come out of that condition, they would have to admit that they were wrong and things like this. And then the next auditing level has to do with very deeply digging into and erasing the moments of pain and unconsciousness that you've experienced for your last, 70 trillion years. And then when you finish that level, you have, according to L. Ron Hubbard, when you erase all these moments of pain and unconsciousness, you have erased what he calls your reactive mind. And then they say you've achieved the state of clear. Okay. And after that is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, okay.
Because up until this point, see, and everything I just described are the non-confidential lower levels of Scientology.
Because this is open, so even if this is not something that you're leaking from the inside. This is just like
you can walk into any Scientology organization and open up their books and read about all of the auditing procedures for every level I just described for you.
And up until now, this sounds to me very much like psychotherapy, to be honest.
The irony is that L. Ron Hubbard hates psychotherapy.
Yeah, I know from the research in the video. But this is, from what I know, I'm not a psychiatrist, but from what I know, it sounds like psychotherapy.
Yeah, it does to me too. Okay, so that's where they hit you. They hit you with the big one. They go, okay, now listen. Up until now, we've been telling you that everything that's wrong with you is because of your reactive mind. And all of these lower auditing levels that you did before you tackled your reactive mind were just to make you more able to confront and attack your reactive mind. But here's what's really wrong with you. We just erased your reactive mind. But 75 million years ago, this galactic dictator named Xenu brought trillions of beings to this planet, Earth, and blew them up in volcanoes with hydrogen bombs. And that really messed up those thetans, those beings. You have tens of thousands of those beings stuck to you, your body, and stuck to you as a being. And you now have to get rid of their reactive minds.
And I'm out the door. Ciao. Ciao. Why? Okay, tell me about, so when you reach this level, what was your first thought?
I never reached that level.
You never reached that level. Okay. But I thought you were in the Sea Org. So you can be in the Sea Org without. So how far up are we when you talk about is David Miscavige on this level?
So where you learn about Xenu and the body thetans is on OT3. I would say less than 10% of Scientologists have ever reached OT3.
How do you know, though, about these Xenu and stuff if you haven't reached OT3?
From all the ex-Scientologists who've left and who've done OT8, and they all... First of all, the materials leaked onto the internet. Like back in, I don't remember if it was the late 80s or the early 90s. Well, no, the internet wasn't around in the late 80s. Someone eventually stole the materials and published them to the internet. That's actually the first time that Scientology, that's when Scientology started waging its war on the internet. And there's a whole, you can look up the history of that. Scientology was literally having the homes raided of the people who would post this so-called, confidential Scientology trade secrets to the internet. And plus there's hundreds and hundreds of Scientologists who have done these levels who then leave Scientology and talk about them. My own mother has done these levels. Yeah. And so, but here's the thing. Okay. When I explained before the public and the staff and the Sea Org, the public are the ones who are paying for Scientology. Those are the ones who, for the most part, end up going up the higher levels of the bridge. The staff members and the Sea Org members are too busy doing their jobs to go up the bridge. And you're not required to go up the bridge in order to even reach the highest ranks of the Sea Org the Sea organization. I mean, some of Scientology's highest level executives have not done the OT levels. It's completely disconnected. Your rank in the organization as a worker is completely disconnected from your case state on the bridge.
Yep. But I guess, though, if you were to audit someone, you would necessarily have to audit someone below your level. You can't audit.
You nailed it. So in the Sea Org, the only time a Sea Org member, almost the only time a Sea Org member does the OT levels is when they are being trained to be the level of auditor required to deliver the OT levels.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to audit you on OT5, I have to be a class 9 auditor. So as a part of my class 9 auditor training, I'm going to do OT5.
Yeah. What was your job in the Sea Org?
My job in the Sea Org was to oversee all of the training of auditors and all of the auditing, but at the lower non-confidential level at one of the organizations in Hollywood on L. Ron Hubbard Way.
Oh, okay, because again, I now know that Scientology is a lot of places. It's not as far as I know, it's not come to Norway yet, but it is several places, especially in the US.
What's the biggest city in Norway?
Oslo.
There is an org in Oslo.
Okay, there you go. I have to look out my windows then and be careful.
Take some videos.
I have to get to why I have to be careful. But okay, but back to you with the auditing. So you have So you have audited a lot of people.
So my job was to oversee the training of auditors and the delivery of auditing. I was a trained auditor, but it was not my job to audit people. I hated auditing people.
Why?
Oh man, because I, as a child, remember, I had never had any choice. The reason I hated auditing people is because I hated getting auditing. And I hated getting auditing because as a child, imagine how horrific it is to basically be being interrogated in a locked room that you're not allowed to leave by a stranger while holding the cans of an e-meter, and you can't leave the room until the auditor says your needle is floating, but you don't know how to make your needle float, and you don't want to answer the question you're being asked. Like, how many children just like being interrogated by a stranger and talking about things they're ashamed and embarrassed of? Like, for me, auditing sessions were pure torture. I would do everything I could to avoid having to get an auditing session. And because I hated getting auditing, I hated giving auditing. Like, as much as I didn't want to have to talk about things I was ashamed or embarrassed about, I didn't want to have to make someone else do that either. So I hated it.
Yeah, it makes sense. I've heard you say elsewhere that you learned how to get the e-meter to float. Like
you can make the needle float.
You had like a trick for that. Explain that.
Yeah. Well, when you're training on how to use the e-meter, you are also trained on all the ways that you can physically influence the e-meter. Now, you're trained on those things so that you can tell if the person you're auditing is trying to do that. But it also allows you to figure out how to do it really, really, really well.
Yeah. But how do you do it though?
For me, I would breathe in quickly through my, like, but I'm making it more obvious right now so you can see what I'm doing. But if I just go, that will make the needle boom. So you have to do it lightly and you have to do it regularly and repeatedly so that it looks like it's smoothly going back and forth.
What is the physics about this? Like, why does it float? Do we know?
It's a potentiometer. It's a variable resistor. It's an ohm. It's an ohm meter. It's measuring a resistance to the tiny electrical flow that the battery is sending through your body. When you hold the cans of the e-meter, you're completing an electrical circuit. So basically, the needle's going back and forth. It's just measuring resistance. Now, I can explain to you how resistance increases and how it decreases. I honestly cannot explain to you how a needle floats. I don't believe that the e-meter works on some secret spiritual thing. I don't believe. But I also don't believe the e-meter works the way L. Ron Hubbard says it works. So L. Ron Hubbard says that, you have a magnetic field around your body and that these mental image pictures have electrical charge. And, when they get restimulated, the electrical charge impinges the magnetic field of your body and it gets picked up by the carrier wave of the e-meter and it gets shown on the dial. I don't believe that. No. But I also don't understand, with physics, what makes because believe me, there is plenty of times in an auditing session where the needle just calmly and smoothly goes back and forth like this. And the size of the floating needle depends on what the sensitivity is sent to. I don't claim to understand it. I'm not saying that.
But a physicist will most likely be able to just explain to us how it works, and it's not some woozy-gazy Thetan or Thetans and whatever Xenu shit. Is most likely just physics, and it's probably random in my opinion, because if you sit long enough, sooner or later that randomness will eventually amount to something.
Probably. There is a documentary called, I'm almost positive it's called I Am Me. And it's not a Scientology documentary. It has something to do with spirituality. And they take like one of these e-meter, a device similar to an e-meter, and they put it in like yogurt. Okay.
Yeah.
And then they put the yogurt like next to a person. And I hope I'm remembering this correctly, but it was the point they were trying to show is there's something more happening here than meets the eye, because the electrical resistance of this yogurt is not changing, but somehow the meter is being influenced by something, and it seemed to be in proximity to the person. And it was one of these sort of woo-woo, new age documentaries. But all I'm saying is I've spent thousands of hours playing around with this e-meter.
Yeah.
And I'm telling it ain't working on hand sweat. Yes, hand sweat affects the readings of the e-meter, but there are meter reads that are not being affected by hand sweat or muscle tension. And I just don't claim to know how that works. That's all I'm saying.
Why hasn't anyone? We don't have to. I understand this is not your area of expertise, and who fucking cares, anyways. But it's has nobody like. There's been a lot of documentaries made on Scientology, and nobody. You tell me nobody has actually done the work of finding a physicist and get that physicist to look at the e-meter and explain how it works.
The closest thing I've seen is there's a fantastic, either German or Austrian engineering channel on YouTube that does a full breakdown of the Mark Super 7 quantum version of the e-meter. And I did a reaction video to that video. It is fascinating, but he's just going over the engineering of the thing. He's going over what every individual part is and what that part does. But that's different than actually putting someone on the cans or doing other tests, hooking it up to inanimate objects and doing, testing and proving this and not proving that. I haven't seen anyone dig into the kind of thing you're talking about. And it would be really fascinating. I don't have the time to do it. But
Mark Rober, go out there, fix it for us, please. Please. Okay. No, but let's go back to the story. So you when did you leave and how did you leave?
It was sort of a two-phase process. There's when I left the Sea Org, then there's when I mentally left Scientology, and then there's when I officially left Scientology. Now, remember, the Sea Org is a billion-year contract, but you can leave the Sea Org and still be a public Scientologist. People do that all the time.
Okay.
Because the Sea Org is such an absolute commitment, you are not allowed to have children in the Sea Organization. You used to be able to. That's a whole other story. You cannot anymore. They don't let you. So if you're a Sea Org member, and you can only marry another Sea Org member, if you get pregnant, you have to either get an abortion or leave the Sea Org. They want you to get an abortion. Scientology.
I have to ask: Are you married today?
Yes.
With someone from?
So my wife and I got married over 20 years ago in the Sea Organization. We left when she got pregnant. We are still married. We've been separated for a number of years, and we're getting a divorce. We're friends. We're on good terms. But so we have 3 daughters. We got married in the Sea Org. We left the Sea Org because we were having a baby. But literally, we had to go to our musters, our staff muster the next morning and say, I said, Heather's pregnant. We're not going to get an abortion. And so we will be leaving. And they said, okay. Now they used to, before it cost them a lot of money in lawsuits, they used to put a lot of pressure on people to terminate pregnancies in the Sea Org. It's one of the most, I'm firmly pro-choice.
Yeah.
But Scientology calls itself a religion. Show me one other religion that has a weekly shuttle that takes its clergy members to the abortion clinic.
Yeah, it also sounds like they have, what's the incentive? I guess they can get more out of the people if they don't have children, because children is like it's a poor investment if you want to, like, for productivity at least.
Distraction.
Distraction also. But I would also guess that it's a good way to get members, because at some point people will struggle to believe in Xenu. But if you have them indoctrinated from when they were 4 years old, such as yourself, it's probably easier.
Easier to what?
To indoctrinate.
You mean if you were having a lot of kids born into Scientology?
Yeah. There's a lot of religions that have become massive because they've been very good at getting babies. And those babies have then in turn gotten indoctrinated, and then religion eventually takes over.
Everything you're talking about is one of the reasons Scientology is shrinking so quickly, because Scientology is so expensive that as a Scientologist, there's no incentive to have 10 children. And as a Sea Org member, you're not even allowed to have children. So, like you said, other religions, they got like 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 kids. And even if you're in a religion where, maybe you pay 10% of your income to the church, in Scientology, you give more than 100% of your income to the church. Like, people go deeply into debt and bankrupt paying for Scientology. So, it's extremely expensive. So oftentimes, if a Scientology family has too many kids, they'll just send the kids to the Sea Org to work for Scientology, because they can't afford to pay for them to do Scientology.
It's there's so much stuff we have to talk about here. Tom Cruise. We just jump there. Let's talk about Tom Cruise. He's the most famous Scientologist in the world. And you also have John Travolta. But let's first start with Tom Cruise. How did he get involved with Scientology and when?
A Scientologist named Mimi Rogers got Tom Cruise into Scientology. Mimi was his first wife. Mimi's father was a highly trained Scientology auditor who ran a Scientology center somewhere in California. And the truth is, I do not know how Mimi met Tom Cruise. If I heard the story, I've forgotten the story. But Mimi is how Tom got into Scientology. And Mimi's not in Scientology anymore. And neither is her father, if her father is even still alive. He was still married to Mimi when he met Nicole Kidman for Days of Thunder.
Okay.
And so the thing that makes Tom Cruise's Scientology involvement kind of noteworthy is that he's not just a famous Scientologist. He's literally the best friend of the leader, David Miscavige. Like, David Miscavige was Tom Cruise's best man at his wedding, to Katie, to Nicole. And I can never remember if he was actually the best man at the wedding for Mimi Rogers. I just cannot recall. I don't think so. But they're best friends. And remember, I've already described earlier, like the way I've described what Scientology is supposed to give you. It's supposed to basically turn you into an all-powerful God, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine the elitism that David Miscavige has of himself being the head of what they think is the only thing that can unplug all of us from the matrix and turn us into godlike neos. And then you've got Tom, who's his best friend and the biggest movie star in the world. They call themselves like the two biggest beings in the world. They consider themselves to be the two most ethical, competent, responsible, powerful beings on earth.
Yeah. What I find strange and interesting is that it does not seem that the Scientology involvement has hampered Tom Cruise's career at all. If anything, I guess he would argue that it has actually helped his career.
He would definitely argue that it has helped his career, but he sure doesn't talk about Scientology anymore, does he?
No, maybe not.
So
I'm not following Tom Cruise that much, to be honest,
but he didn't talk about Scientology hardly at all before the War of the Worlds, And that's because his publicist was a very famous, powerful publicist named Pat Kingsley. And Pat Kingsley kept him from talking about Scientology and kept people from asking him about Scientology. Now, when Tom Cruise was married to Nicole Kidman and he was doing Eyes Wide Shut with Stanley Kubrick, Nicole was getting him further and further away from Scientology. And David Miscavige and his henchmen went in and fixed that problem big time. And he turned Tom against Nicole, and he got Tom to divorce Nicole, and he got Tom to come really back into Scientology hard, and he got Tom to fire Pat Kingsley. And then Pat Kingsley hired his sister, Leanne DeVette, as his publicist. And all of a sudden, Tom Cruise wouldn't shut the hell up about Scientology. And I got to tell you, if you happen to recall all that, that is the moment when Tom Cruise started to become a punchline of jokes. Before that, Tom Cruise was not the punchline of jokes. He was the all-American superhero, Teflon Tom. Nothing could stick to Tom Cruise. All of a sudden, he was crazy Scientologist Tom Cruise jumping on Oprah Winfrey's couch. Now, it did massively destroy his public image and his public relations. Now, the truth is, his career has succeeded anyway. So I would argue that it's not that Scientology hasn't hurt his career. It's that his career has continued to survive despite Scientology. But I think Tom Cruise saw that talking about Scientology and being the poster boy for Scientology was actually hurting his career. I mean, he got fired from Paramount. I mean, he separated from his partner, Paula Wagner. Cruise Wagner Productions went kaput. He got fired from Paramount. If you remember, Tom Cruise and his partner, Paula Wagner, purchased the United Artists studio. That went kaput. That died. And all of a sudden, Tom Cruise stopped talking about Scientology. You know, after Katie Holmes left him And, that's a whole story. Katie Holmes said that she partially left Tom to protect Suri from Scientology. Like, holy cow. And all of a sudden, Tom Cruise, the super Scientologist, not talking about Scientology so much. So I think Tom Cruise decided that talking about Scientology was going to hurt his career, and he stopped. But he's still one of the most bankable stars in the world. But I'll tell you, I mean, the Hollywood press is kind of responsible for that. Like, the guy has disowned his own biological daughter. Like, the guy hasn't seen Suri in over 10 years. The guy hasn't spoken to Suri in over 10 years. No one asks him about that. And you might go, well, that's his private business. Why would the entertainment, journalists ask him about that? And you go, well, he disconnected from Suri because of Scientology. And so it's like, if the press really wanted to hold Tom's feet to the fire, I think we would see more fallout in terms of his career. But they play nice with him, and he plays nice with them, and he doesn't talk about Scientology, and nobody asks him about it. And his movies continue to do well. And it's probably...
He has some famous interviews where he goes apeshit on. I think I'm guessing that a lot of interviewers are a bit afraid of what will happen if they ask the wrong question with him. And he's...
I promise you, no one is given an interview with him unless they promise not to ask him about Scientology.
No, exactly.
Whereas back in 2005, when he was doing all the War of the World stuff, he was out there wanting to talk about Scientology. So... you're probably partially talking about the famous Matt Lauer interview, right?
Yeah, I feel like there's several of them, but I also want to touch on John Travolta, because before Tom Cruise was a huge movie star, John Travolta was maybe an even bigger superstar. But it seems to me that tell me about like that there's kind of a duel between John Travolta and Tom Cruise in becoming the biggest Scientology action hero or whatever. Why did Tom Cruise win? And what does John Travolta do now? Like, what's his role in Scientology?
Oh, that answer is easy. Scientology is one of the most homophobic organizations that exists, and John Travolta is gay. So that's why, like, David Miscavige doesn't even like John Travolta because he's gay.
Okay, but why does John Travolta want to be involved with an organization that is homophobic?
Exactly. But there is an answer. So Scientology has been such a big part of John Travolta's life since he was I was going to say a young man. Yeah, I forget how. I mean, in his early 20s.
Is John Travolta gay though? I was just thinking that I didn't know that. Is he? Is he like? Has he been public about that?
He's bisexual. He's not been public about it. But it's
how do you know?
Well,
is this something that everybody knows that I just haven't reached Norway, or
everybody knows?
Okay,
especially the people in Scientology who've been involved in, look, when you're in Scientology and you're getting auditing, you're talking about everything.
Yeah.
And eventually everybody knows everything. He's bisexual. He just likes men a little bit more than he likes women. And the reason that John has never gone all the way up the bridge is because of that. He won't stop having sex with men. And I don't even say that to ridicule him or judge him, but Scientology is very homophobic. You can be a Scientologist.
Why? Yeah, sorry.
Well, because L. Ron Hubbard says the only reason you're gay is because of your reactive mind, and it's something that needs to be fixed. So
but all the Scientologists are idiots. We know that. That's kind of the gist of this whole conversation. But why does John Travolta want to be involved with this organization when it's so obvious? It should be very obvious to him that I cannot live with this because I want this life and they're not letting me live my life. And it's why don't they want to let me live my life? They have no real reasons. This is just crazy. Fuck off.
His Scientology friends and Scientology and the people at the Celebrity Center and the people in the president's office at the Celebrity Center have been there for him and catered to him and served him and been there in his worst times. Like John Travolta was very young when the love of his life died in his arms. Scientology and Scientologists and his auditors and all of his caretakers, his Scientology handlers were there for him throughout all of the most horrific times of his life. The loss of that woman, I'm going to forget her name, but she was a famous actress. The loss of his son, the loss of his wife, the loss of his best friend, Lisa Marie, the loss of his other best friend, Kirstie Alley. Like, John is they treat him so well, and they cater to him, and they are there for him. His kids have been raised in Scientology. His nannies for his kids are Scientologists. His friends are Scientologists. His wife was a diehard Scientologist. Everyone in his life were Scientologists. When they would fall on hard times, which even John Travolta did, when they needed money, Scientologists were there for him. So he just very much doesn't care about the bad news, the abuse, David Miscavige beating people up. He doesn't care. Like, the truth is, Scientologists think that being gay is something that's wrong with you and needs to be fixed with auditing. But Scientologists think almost everything that's wrong with you is something that can be fixed with auditing. So it's not like he has people every day in Scientology being like, "You're bad, John. Don't be gay. Don't be gay." It's just, for him, it's a social thing. It's his social safety net. Now, look, I can explain all that, and you and I can still sit here and agree that it is absolutely crazy for John Travolta to still be a Scientologist. He could just, just be free from this and live his life as an out and proud man in the real world without being under the control of this human trafficking cult. But it's like, I got to tell you, man, it's hard to, if you haven't been in a cult, it is truly hard to actually explain it in a way that can be easily appreciated of how much you have your blinders on, just mentally, logically, emotionally. And I think what it comes down to is Scientology just has not been bad enough to John Travolta himself to make him want to leave. That's eventually what makes Scientologists leave, is something happens to them personally that is just such an injustice, just so egregious. They never thought this would happen to them, that it makes them start to question everything.
Yeah.
And Scientology goes out of its way to be good enough to John Travolta that he never hits that point. And the same is true for Tom Cruise. I mean, Scientology bends over backwards to make sure Tom Cruise and John Travolta are happy and get whatever they want.
Yeah. Where is David Miscavige's wife? What happened to her?
Okay. She is working at a super secret Scientology base in Twin Peaks, California. It's so confidential that even people that work at Scientology's confidential international management base in Gilman Hot Springs, California, do not know where these other bases are located. It's interesting talking about Shelley Miscavige because she hasn't been like publicly seen, people think she's some sort of a victim. She's like David Miscavige's henchman. She was his right-hand woman for, I don't know, 15 plus years. She's no victim. She's no Scientology victim. She was David Miscavige's wife and assistant for 15, 20 years.
But why did he send her away?
That's what I will explain. Also, before I give that full explanation, Shelley Miscavige was never a public figure in Scientology. She was never one of these famous executives. She never spoke at Scientology events. Your average rank and file Scientologist has never heard of her, even before she was sent away. Had never heard of her, had never seen her, didn't even know who she was, had no idea who David Miscavige was married to, and would never even be able to pick her out of a lineup. Your average rank and file Sea Org member or Scientologist, if you showed them pictures of 5 women, would never be able to tell you who Shelley Miscavige was. So this whole thing of she's disappeared, it's a little bit of a PR gimmick, which I freely have participated in. But it is a PR gimmick to embarrass David Miscavige. So here's what really happened. She wasn't just David Miscavige's wife. Her job in the Sea Org was to be his assistant. Like, that's the only reason she ever even traveled with him. In the Sea Org, being someone's wife doesn't mean anything. So if she had not been his assistant and she just had some other post, she would never even travel with him. But she did travel with him everywhere that he went because she was his assistant. Miscavige was devolving more and more into paranoia and hysteria and was assigning impossible tasks to the Sea Org members at the international management base, like really just to do busy work. So to the best of my recollection, because I wasn't there, but this story has been told by many, he assigned a bunch of high-level Sea Org members at the International Management Base the task of redoing all of Scientology's organizing boards for its upper-level organizations. And it was an impossible task that was never going to get done. And whatever he submitted, he was always going to reject it. One time, David Miscavige left the base. Shelly Miscavige decided to take control of the project of getting these org boards redone. David Miscavige took that as a betrayal. And it was probably for him the last straw of some things he felt were betrayals, because he felt she was taking sides with them, right?
Okay.
She was then almost saying, well, Dave, I'm the one who got this done, so I'm the one submitting it to you for approval. So if you disapprove it, you're disapproving me. You're not disapproving them. He's like, that's it. You're done. You're off your post, off the base. And he sent her to another base. For the Sea Org, this is not unusual. So when someone says she hasn't been seen, you go, seen by who? Who's supposed to see her? Who would even know her if they saw her? And a handful of years later, a professional filmmaker that Scientology would hire and bring to the base to shoot their films ran into her at a Chipotle with a couple other high-level Sea Org members. And it's like, Shelly Miscavige is not being held in a dungeon somewhere against her will. Shelly Miscavige is a very high-level Sea Org member working at a secretive Sea Org base. And you can find videos on YouTube of people visiting the base. Actually, in Leah Remini's television show, it was called Scientology in the Aftermath. I was actually in the first season of that show. There's an episode about me and my brother. In that show, there is a whole episode about Shelly Miscavige. And Mike Rinder and Leah go to the base where Shelly Miscavige is being held. And there's a private security service called Talon Executive Services that has been hired to guard the base, to keep... And we can argue whether they're there to keep Shelly there or to keep other people out. I would argue they're definitely there for both. But so the answer is nobody, no law enforcement, no ex-Scientologists are seriously concerned about Shelly or think she's dead or missing. It's really a way to embarrass David Miscavige. Like, bro, Scientology couldn't even save your marriage. Like, you couldn't even use Scientology that is supposed to have the technology to handle everything in life. You're the freaking leader, and you couldn't even make your marriage work. You had to remove your own wife from her post as your assistant. How pathetic is that?
Or it says something about him as a person, I guess, which is a telling sign that he looks like a Bond villain and he acts like one, it seems, as well. So it's yeah. But okay. So before I let you go, so we've talked about this with the security guards, and they're filming a lot and they are harassing people. So you left the church and now you've been very outspoken against Scientology, and you're actually doing wonderful work, in my opinion, helping people that want to leave and showing them that there's an afterlife, if you will. There's life after Scientology, and you can actually help them. But what has Scientology done to you?
So they follow me with private investigators. They've created a website. They stole my name and put up a website. Smith-Levin.com is a hate website created by Scientology. They call people I do business with.
Are they allowed to do that though? In Norway, I don't think they're allowed to, because you own the rights to your own name.
Well, I'll tell you this. If a lawyer ever reached out to me and said, hey, just so you know, what they're doing is illegal and I can help you fix that, then I'd be like, great, you're hired. But I've never cared enough to actively pursue it, because all they're going to do is put it up on another website. Who is the real Smith-Levin.com? Like, all they're going to do is put it up on another website. So the way it is right now, I can use it as a perfect example of how terrible and vindictive and petty and ruthless this organization is, that they literally stole my name to create a website about me. It's just not worth my time and money to actively pursue getting it back. But if there's a lawyer out there that's like, you really could get it back and I know exactly how to do it and I'll do it for you, I'd be like, great, you're hired. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm in the real estate world. Anyone I sell a property to gets a call from a private investigator pretending to be someone that wants to hire me and just wants to do a character reference, looking for someone to talk crap about me. They follow me with private investigators. I've busted them on my YouTube channel before. Very excellent videos of busting private investigators.
Yeah, I've seen those.
I'll get calls from, so they try to do a lot of stuff. But they have created in me a Scientology resistant strain of virus that cannot possibly be intimidated or threatened or afraid of them, because I know who they are, and it's just a bunch of clowns running a clown show. Like David Miscavige is a clown. He's like not a smart guy. He's a clown, and he's overseeing a crumbling empire. I don't know if you know this, I live 5 minutes from the Flag Land Base. I live in Clearwater, Florida.
Yeah.
Me and my friends are outside protesting outside of their base every single Friday evening. They're terrified of us. We can take the whole building hostage with just a few cell phones going live on YouTube.
But do they stick to you though, or are they also harassing your family? Because to me that is I think it's I don't think it's a good thing if they harass you, but it's different if they harass your children.
So my children are kids, so it would be hard to harass them. And I don't have any evidence, and my kids have never mentioned ways in which they've ever been harassed. I think it's interesting that they've never harassed Heather. Like, they don't have a website up about Heather, but Heather also has never publicly spoken out against Scientology.
No.
Heather didn't appear with me on the Leah Remini show. So I guess the answer is they've never gone after my family.
Yeah.
Although
you are kind of asking for it in a way, like I would think
I'm
that
asking for it.
You kind of do, because it is a game and you know what's coming and you're playing the game. So it's the same with the media. If you are actively seeking attention, they will use your name, they will use your image in the articles. But if you are a private person, they will most likely keep you private in the media as well. And it kind of the same thing applies to you. Like, if you're poking the bear, expect to get bitten, right?
You are correct.
So, okay,
and
Aaron,
honestly,
it's so much. I have a long list of questions, but I can't. I don't want to take more of your time. If people want to learn more, they should definitely check out your channels. Please, where can people find you so you can point them in the right direction?
Growing Up in Scientology on YouTube is the hub of everything. Everything else, YouTube's what I focus on.
Yeah, and it's brilliant. So people should check it out. Thank you for your time, Aaron, and hopefully I can chat with you again in the future.
Thank you.